There we go. Yeah.
Okay. I'm talking and didn't get ready to go. Sorry, guys. Okay, so. We don't have much going on today. Most of this was. Set up for Ryan's benefit. If I recall. So I'm gonna be looking at Ryan quite a bit. And staff.
Can you screen share the agenda?
Well, you guys haven't fighting?
agenda?
Pardon?
You put her way over there by herself? Okay, go ahead and make the roll call. I'm trying to have a joke here.
Good try.
It didn't work.
Okay, I'll do roll call.
Roll call.
Commissioner Hartwig,
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter,
Here.
Commissioner Hawks,
Here.
Commissioner Sager,
Here.
Commissioner Perkins. Here. Chair Wheeler is absent and Commissioner Johnson is both absent, and we heard from him today that he'll be resigning from the commission. So however, we'll figure out how to count that on the minutes.
Okay, approval of the minutes. Of last minutes, and that was. It doesn't say what time day it was, but.
June.
Am I the wrong time again?
I don't.
So reapproval of the, is it the June 21st meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Any,
I motion to approve
okay,
the.
the motion approved,
I was here, so I'll second it.
okay, and a second. Is there any questions about it? Okay, roll call.
Do you want to can we just get a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Like a roll call, but okay. Raise your hand if you agree with it.
Aye.
What's she doing?
Thank you.
Okay. The next thing we're going down to is commission business, parks and recreation. This discussion, okay, this is where you guys are talking, we listening, right? I'm looking at you, Ryan. Okay, go. We're
Okay.
talking.
Yep, so we'll give a staff presentation. And Alan will screen share the PowerPoint here in a moment. And so, yeah. Just a little background on where this discussion came from, how this came to be a planning commission item. You all might remember we held a joint workshop with the city council maybe in January or February, early this year. We talked with them about this long-running list of code issues, development code issues that our team has been building over the past 3 or 4 years. As long as I've been with the city, we've been noticing problems with the code and just kind of keeping track of them in this list. One of those problems is the fact that our code does not have any across the board requirements for developers of like, especially residential subdivision developers to dedicate or somehow contribute to the availability of parkland in the city. So that's where we kind of formally started talking about this issue. It's come up at a number of other, public hearings that you all have had for like subdivision developments that were not proposing any park space, and because of state law, they were required to be approved even though they didn't have park space. So it's been a frustration that's come up.
What direction are we going? Are we going to show us some areas that we can do this, or are we just going to just pinpoint the places that we're going to do, or pinpoint what our goals are?
Both. So we're going to try today to help lay out some options. What we've got here is Alan's gonna show, talk about some of the research that he did at our most recent discussion with you all about this. You all decided that it would be helpful if we came back with some examples of how other cities manage to require developers to put in parks. So we went ahead and did that research, gathered up some information. We're prepared to share that with you now, field some questions about that. And I think it'll be pretty brief, just getting through that sort of baseline discussion, presenting that information, and then opening it up to you all to determine that second part of what you just said, Commissioner Sager, kind of what are the goals that we're going towards? That's not something that we staff can determine. We can kind of help facilitate your discussion of that.
You can send it in the right direction.
Right. Yeah, we'll try. But that's
Hold it,
also,
don't say don't try.
that's part of our question for you is, if we're gonna be developing these requirements, what are the desired outcomes of doing that? What do you want the
We
end?
gotta make sure
result
the
to look
city
like.
council likes us and.
Sure.
And what is it, the recreational department, we don't want to step on their toe either.
Right. So it'll be a process. It'll be a lot of coordinating with different, boards and agencies. So, but yeah, so we'll just get you all started on that. Can we go to the next slide? And I'll just give a little more background, specific to the problem. So our code currently only requires park dedication for a very specific type of subdivision, which is called a planned unit development, planned development. It's called both of those things. Examples of those subdivisions in our city are Campanella Estates and Faraday Hills. A planned unit development, that approval process is only available to subdivisions that are at least 5 acres in size. And there's some other criteria that they have to meet if they're going to go that different approval route. A lot of developers like to go that route because it allows them flexibility on certain standards. So like Campanella and Faraday were both allowed to have smaller lot sizes than they usually would in the R1 zone, things like that. Anyway, won't go too much into that, but the PUD is the only type of subdivision that our code currently requires park dedication for. So all other subdivisions or just a standard partition, they are not actually required to dedicate parkland or pay any kind of fee in lieu of provision of parks. And we put the code section up there, which is just kind of laughable in my mind. The developer is encouraged, but is not required to dedicate parkland. So obviously developers are driven by the incentive of being able to make profit. They're going to maximize that. They're not going to give away perfectly good land if they don't have to. So let's move along to the next slide and talk about how that lack of teeth, that lack of actual requirement conflicts with existing goals and objectives that we have adopted into our comp plan and that you all have talked about in these meetings that we've had. We have adopted goals to conserve open space, protect natural and cultural resources, satisfy the recreational needs of Estacada and the state and visitors, identify open spaces. I shouldn't just read off of this slide, but right, we have these goals identified. We've discussed them in these recent meetings. We know that there's a need, there's a basic need, right, for kids and people of all ages to have access to park and recreational facilities. And so that is captured in our comprehensive plan, goals and policies, and it's not currently being met. And on the next slide, we'll actually see the explicit intention, which is also in that chapter 5 of our comp plan. There was clearly an intention at the time of adopting these policies. The city intended to follow through with amending our subdivision ordinances to require the dedication of public parklands in new housing development. And we never succeeded in implementing that and actually getting that adopted into our code. We only have it adopted for planned unit developments, but not all of the other types of developments that come in. So, you all are doing a great job by, pushing that forward, bringing this process closer towards actually implementing that existing intention in our comp plan. So I am going to hand it over to Alan. He's going to introduce those examples from the other jurisdictions that have implemented these requirements across the board. And then after we go through that, you all can discuss next steps, ask questions, and we'll go from there.
All right, thanks, Taylor. So to support your consideration of this issue today, we collected and analyzed relevant code sections from 6 West Coast cities. 4 of them were in Oregon. That was Canby, Junction City, Portland, and Sandy. 1 down south in California, and Milpitas, and 1 in Washington, Burien. And again, we haven't developed any recommendations. This is just for relaying this information, and we're prepared to discuss all this stuff with you and field questions. Okay, so during a land use approval process, there's 3 standard ways that developers can contribute to the provision of open space and parkland for public use. And the first way is dedication. That's what we've been talking about. And what happens there is the city becomes the owner of the tracts that are dedicated, and it assumes responsibility for the maintenance of the land and all associated infrastructure and facilities. There's also reservation, which isn't quite as common, and that's when parkland is reserved by the owner or developer, and the responsibility for the maintenance and operation of that land, it stays with either the owner, or it is assumed by a separate entity like an HOA or some other private organization that can show that it's up to the task of maintaining that land. And then finally, there's fees in lieu, and that is where in certain cases where a developer is allowed to pay a fee that's equal to the value of the land that is required to be dedicated instead of dedicating the actual land. And then those fees they go into like a city's parks SDC fund or some other kind of recreational reserve area fund. Okay. So all of the 6 cities that we looked at, they currently require park and open space dedication for all residential subdivisions. Some of those jurisdictions also require dedication for other land use approvals and types of development, and that includes Sandy, that requires dedication for planned developments, multifamily developments, and manufactured home parks, as well as Canby, which requires dedication for any new residential, commercial, or industrial development. And what can be, they accept fees in lieu as well, which is probably preferred over actual dedication for smaller development projects. Okay, and then several cities also provide exceptions from the open space dedication requirement. So Portland, for subdivisions that are under 40 units, so less than 40 units, or not units, lots would be created. Those are exempted from dedication. And in Canby and Sandy, there are no requirements for the development of certain types of communal living care facilities. And then in Burien, subdivisions of less than 10 acres and planned unit developments are exempted. And so 5 of the 6 cities that we looked at, they allow for the payment of fees in lieu of land dedication. The processes for determining whether to accept fees in lieu, as well as the number and character of those criteria, varies considerably across those jurisdictions. Also varying pretty wildly is the proportion of open space that's required for dedication. Ranges from 3.5 to 10 acres per 1,000 residents. And Canby and Sandy also require a phase 1 environmental site assessment that indicates a clean environmental record prior to accepting dedicated parkland. And that is pretty much all I have in terms of presentation. And we wanted to open it up to discussion, or for questions. You got,
Go ahead. I've got 30 of them, so.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, Alan, when going through the information, I noticed the one city in California, they require 18.5 acres per thousand.
Yes. Let me pull that up. I'm gonna pull that up. And so that's an interesting case because they require that the city provide that ultimately, but they don't put that on the developer. And I believe it was something like 13.5 of or 15 acres was,
Was the developer, wasn't it?
no, that was the city was required to do that. And then the 3.5, I think, was
Was
the,
on
was
the
the,
developer.
yes, yeah. So that's where I got the
Okay.
3.5.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, I thought it was.
So
rather-
the city owned that particular piece of land then?
If it's dedicated, the city assumes ownership of it.
Okay. I said the city didn't buy somebody else's land to make a park.
Well, I think that happens at some points, and that's what the park SDCs, they can go toward the purchase of land. So that's what the fees
So
in lieu are
that's what the
about.
fees in lieu of the
Exactly,
park
yeah.
is.
That would go into a fund that would allow the city to either buy land or maintain current facilities, expand current facilities. That makes sense.
Go ahead.
Okay. So a couple of combinations of, first of all, excellent job. Thank you
Oh,
for your
thanks.
preparation, your investigation, and finding themes that you think could fit within the scope. So job well done. I really appreciate that. That's
Thanks.
exactly
Thank
what
you.
I was hoping for.
Oh, good.
and You nailed it. So well done.
Thanks.
I laugh too at it is encouraged but not required. But that is what it is. What is the current rate of what park SDCs are charged for new developers?
The rate, so the fees. Do you know anything about that, Taylor? I don't know.
The SDCs get charged at the time of individual lot development,
Okay,
and I can ping our permit lead right now during this meeting and see if he can get
Is
that.
that
info
per
right now,
square
but-
foot or is that per lot
Um,
of
I
any
think
size?
it's per unit. I'm pretty sure it's calculated per unit and then based on the type of unit, because there's, the assumption of like the average family that would live in this type of unit would have this many people, and there's a calculation that you take from that to assume how many square feet of park the city wants to
okay.
dedicate. So I think that's how that calculation works. I just don't know what the specifics are.
And I don't need specific numbers. I just am curious if we've set ourselves up, is it to the developer's best interest to just write a small check? Therefore, they don't have to create space inside the development for a park. It's economically to their advantage to just write a check versus really sacrifice 1, 2, or 3 potential developing lots
yeah.
in an effort for that. And so I'm just curious where that balance ratio is in our current SDCs and guidelines,
I mean,
Mhm.
given the fact that we're not seeing a lot of
parks
like
being built. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, land being offered for dedication.
Yeah.
I think that it would speak to that
Yeah.
it's actually a lot
Okay.
easier for them to pay the fee.
So I'm gonna keep asking, but I do at least want to highlight, we'll need to come back to what steps might we need to take in an effort to begin the changing of policy and code to start to move our community more in line with other communities who are doing this type of work when it comes to SDC collection and required space of that choice. Okay. I appreciate that you were aligning this request with the city's strategic plans and goals.
Yeah, the existing policies
Correct.
support this.
Without a doubt, right? You just
Yeah.
showed in 4 or 5 different places
Yep.
where moving in this direction actually helps the city reach its promise to the community who is the co-creators of the strategic plan. And so where are historical barriers over the last 2 or 3 years? I think Taylor did a good job of saying this direction has kind of fizzled out a little bit. Where do the barriers exist that the planning commission could start working, lobbying, advocating, supporting in an effort to move this in a more aggressive manner? Because I think that, and this is just me sharing my opinion, I think that the window for boom in this community, we're in the middle of it. And so moving slow here is not to our advantage when it comes to meeting the needs of the growing amount of children who are moving into this community, ages 3 through 16, and we're over capacity in spaces.
Yeah, I echo that. I think that clearly we have this adopted implementation intention in our comp plan that really should have been, I don't know when, I'd have to look back in the records for when that was included and adopted into the comp plan. But in my mind, it shouldn't have been adopted without the code also being up. They should have just updated the code in the comp plan at the same time, right? So, this should have been done yesterday. So yeah, I echo the kind of urgency there. We are in the middle of this development pressure. And if we can capture, we need to get in there and get those requirements in order to prevent all of this new future development from coming in without this really basic need for kind of quality of life that we all agree is important.
Yeah.
And fortunately, something that is really to our advantage on that is the fact that those goals and policies are already adopted into our comp plan. So when you're updating the development code, one of the criteria for those updates is that it needs to align with whatever related goals and policies there are in your comprehensive plan. So usually you're both updating your comp plan in ways that, you're adopting policies and the corresponding code at the same time, or those policies already exist and you're updating the code to better implement those policies. And this is the latter, right? So we don't need to update the comp plan in order to update the development code, which makes it a little more simple.
Okay, hold on. Okay, when I was on the city council, we went through this procedure and we basically made parks out, set land up for parks in new residential areas. The problem we have here, and I'm not trying to knock anyone, I mean anyone, it just happens. But we got it all set up the way we thought we wanted it. The planning commission helped, we did it, we approved it, everything was great. Then it disappeared. Okay, by that disappearing, the new council came along and probably didn't understand what they were doing, as you just said. So, what we have to do is we really have to basically keep the paperwork straight. So right now, you guys are doing a fantastic job of that. So, right now. Anyway, what I would like to see is if you can find that, that'd be great. If not, let's sit down with the people that was on there, and he was one of them, and I was the other, and see if we can kind of negotiate and work that out again. If we're going to continue to have subdivisions, why not have a park too? Yeah, it won't be a baseball park, but
Well,
But-
this
Why
one,
not?
this needs
Yeah.
to be a baseball size park and
Or
a
soccer
soccer
field.
size
But-
park.
But
Yeah.
then you look, you go to Sandy or Canby. And you go into the industrial area and guess what they got? They got what we want,
Mhm.
you know, so. If that's not legal, let's make it legal. Or let's work on, since we own the planning commission, let's work on it, pass it to the recreational. So they can say yes or no, and then we can get it to the city council. And get it moving. But anyway, I just want everybody to know it was there. We just gotta figure out where it went.
There is this, oh,
I-
sorry, go ahead.
You go.
Yeah.
This requires municipal code change.
Yes,
EMC,
yes.
and that process is, who starts that process?
Either you all or the city council must initiate a development code or comp plan amendment. So you've already basically got it started.
I have a,
Yeah,
Hand
just want
raised.
to point out, Tara.
Yeah, go ahead, Tara.
Sorry, Tara.
sorry, I've just had a couple of comments and questions. This is really awesome. Thank you guys for doing this. I wanted to clarify, so we obviously have SDCs currently that are charged, like you said, when the lots are developed and there's some amount of that set aside for parks. But that is different than this, what all these other cities have where people can either dedicate land or pay a fee. That fee is different than the SDCs, is that correct?
Correct. The SDCs that we have in our schedule that are part of the park SDC are determined by our adopted parks master plan. So, and similar to like the transportation system plan, you identify the desired projects in that plan, so the desired park spaces. And then, you look at how many of them are realistically feasible to fund, and then you put those into your capital improvement plan. So the capital improvement plan is what determines the amount of that SDC charge that each new home or whatever development has to pay. That's all captured according to the projects we have adopted into our CIP.
Okay,
for
so
parks.
that won't necessarily be changed or touched by this. So, okay, that's what I thought. And I mean, it is interesting, the idea of having subdivisions dedicate a park and how some of these code systems have handled that, like who owns it and who maintains it, versus having them pay a fee in lieu. And what what sort of started this conversation was Ryan pointing out that there was no the need for a ball field, and in that case, it's really, it'd be better if there were some chunks of money versus creating a system of little subdivision parks that aren't really that usable
Yes.
by people outside the park. And then I agree with Ryan that we're either in the middle or maybe even at an end or a lull of
Yeah.
this sort of development blow up. I know that some of the subdivisions that are already approved or whatever have been having trouble selling spots, and we had people coming back last meeting wanting to cut their land up into smaller plats to sell it easier. And I just wonder, all those kids are still going to move here, and is there some way besides just increasing the parks SDC to capture funds or parklands out of these things that have already been approved? Because we may not, we're not seeing the slew of proposals every meeting that we used to, and we'll still need parkland for those kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is all, you said a lot of stuff and I want to respond to all of it, but
Sorry.
last point, no, it's okay, it's good. To that last point, updating the SDC schedule to add more park projects into that schedule is something that would capture that new development, even though the land use approvals are already complete. The SDCs don't get charged until the time of construction, building permits. And so if we update the SDC schedule, we would need to identify, what projects are included in, what parks are included in that project plan. And then that would increase the amount that we're collecting per new home for park projects. So that's one thing that we could do, but that's different from a development code amendment. And we can talk a little bit
Right.
about that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we might need both.
Right. Yeah.
And I would kind of be surprised if we were just, maybe a pointless comment, but I'd be surprised if we run into a lot of pushback around changing this. It's so clear. I mean, Canby's got such a great one. These are all cities that are similar, and it seems like kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. Could I ask a couple more clarifiers from the examples that you've brought forth, fees in lieu of? And so I guess a question would be, do these municipalities have some type of non-discriminative formula of what a in lieu of represents?
Yeah, so the cities mostly, they either decide at the beginning of the year, like how to calculate the value of a property, like what fair market value means. So yeah, there's a few that do that. I remember one of the cities, the city and the developers split the cost of an assessor that would go out and actually determine what the value of the land is. And I think in another one, it was kind of just up to council. So there's just different ways that you can approach determining what fair market value means for that land.
Okay. Excellent. And then just to clarify, and this is my rookie-ism on the committee, but to change this code would be all things moving futuristically. It would not be retroactively. So communities already or subdivisions already in existence would be grandfathered into whatever that they have.
Yeah, we
That's
couldn't go
correct,
back
right?
and
Yeah,
retroactively.
which is
require that.
great. I just wanted
Yeah.
to determine that.
Sure.
And then another clarifying question for me is, in your last example, I think it was 3.5 acres to 10 acres per 1,000 residents.
Mhm.
Is that an aspirational goal based on the strategic plan, or is there really an algorithm that determines 40 subdivided lots equals X amount of residents?
I think that determining that number is just a policy choice that councils make.
Okay.
And then there are formulas to actually like arrive at that number based on it. Taylor was talking about it before, like, there'll be like a table, like single family homes is just, that's 3 people. That's the estimate.
Sure,
For
3.5. or
multifamily
whatever,
unit,
yeah.
it'll be 2 people.
Yeah.
And so forth. So then using the aspirational number or, that determined number per 1,000 residents. And then the table, you can calculate how much land will be required or how much SDCs will be charged.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
2 more.
Okay.
Wants to talk too.
Oh,
Go ahead, finish it up.
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
enjoying this.
Yeah. In any of the examples that you provided, was there specificities in terms of what constitutes park or land dedication space? So like, for example, you read in the news that clearly Portland and pickleball has become very popular.
Mhm.
And you see all across the place, citizens coming to committees just adamantly opposed to the noise of the pickleball paddles, right? And it's
Right.
affecting that kind of stuff. But is there specificity in these examples where if you did play the per 1,000 resident game, that, if it's a 100 site subdivision, that then constitutes enough space for a full-size baseball field and a playground. Or if it's you said there's some exemptions, you know, if it's a 50,000 or 50 square foot, that constitutes an outdoor, is it that specific? Or,
I didn't see anything with that kind of specificity as to what types of facilities or if there was a certain number or
Yeah.
kind of facilities. It was more just general land. And I will say that what is different about all these other cities from Estacada is that land is required to be dedicated and the city holds what's the word?
the deed?
Though they have the right to accept fees in lieu of that, whereas in Estacada, developers are invited to dedicate land, but it's up to them whether or not they pay fees in lieu.
Right. Okay.
Can I just make a
Oh,
little
yeah.
contribution? There is in kind of the parks world generally accepted size ranges for types of parks. So if they had to dedicate, you know, let's say 20 acres, that would be considered a neighborhood park. And here's what is generally accepted under neighborhood parks.
Right.
As opposed to something like a pocket park.
Okay, thank you.
And is that in the state
That's it.
comprehensive?
Yeah,
the
that's in
SCORP?
the SCORP.
Fun
Nice.
acronym.
Yeah.
Can't tell you
And
what it
then
means.
my final question, which you alluded to just in your final answer, but I suppose that if the developer goes through the pathway of a dedication of land, really at that point, the city then becomes the determiner as to what is placed inside that land. Whereas if it's, which is the second, I'm with you there. So basically the land becomes the city's once they dedicate it and you can
Mhm.
put a water park there for all that matters.
Right.
That would be up to the city, but that would also, once the dirt is dedicated, then that's where the park SDCs and other public monies come in to install the things that go on the dirt, right?
Facility.
Yeah.
And actually, like many cities require the developer to do the improvements before dedication.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, the city accepts a dedication.
That's important.
Right, and yeah, it's very important. So they'll say, yes, we'll take that land, but it needs sidewalks, it needs to be graded, it needs this, you know. All these criteria need to be satisfied before the city accepts the land, before it's deeded to them and they take over maintenance and such.
Excellent.
And
Okay.
I'll add a little asterisk there. For the standard subdivision process, we're required to have clear and objective standards for residential development. So for a planned unit development, that one's flexible. We can require them to install, you know, whatever park facilities we decide, the council decides they want to go in there, and they'll have to build it because they chose to go this more flexible planned unit development route.
Yeah.
But for our standard subdivision criteria, if we want to be able to require specific park facilities to get built, we'll need to make sure that we would need to make sure that those are really clear and objective. The easier thing to do would just be account for it in the SDCs that we collect and just get the land area dedication calculation clear and objective. That's just my opinion, but there's probably ways other cities have done that.
I'm sorry, Richard.
Richard, did you want to
Go ahead.
speak? You've been so patient.
Question, the two planned developments that you had mentioned. How did that affect, in other words, how did the looseness affect what they did or what they've done? What kind of parks do they have? Do they have open space?
Campanella does. for sure.
Campanella has the city owns that park in Campanella. Is it just called Campanella
I
Park?
think it's just called Campanella Park.
And so that was required to be dedicated to the city. I think that the only other like flexibility that they were granted, I don't know, I wasn't here in 2016 when Campanella was approved originally, I think 2016. But I think the main flexibility they were granted was just being allowed to go way down to smaller lot sizes. I think they're down to 4,000 square feet or 3,500. I don't know off the top of my head. Faraday Hills was allowed to go down to, I think, 3,400 square foot lots. They were granted some exceptions to, I think, some of the street widths. And they provided a bunch of like trail open space and like trail facilities. And there were specific facilities that they're required to put in, like public benches, wayfinding. There's some specific infrastructure in there that they were required, that was included in that council approval.
Mhm.
And so those are in the process of being built now.
And the
Cool.
city will maintain those?
No, that one is being maintained, those are being maintained privately by the
By-
HOA. But they have, the way that they accomplish that, I think it's one of these options that Alan described, reservation, right? So the Faraday HOA is in charge of owning and maintaining those tracks. But they had to submit they had to document their maintenance plan and agreement with the city. So they are legally bound to maintain those according to our, I think Public Works oversees that according to our standards.
Mhm.
Mr. Hartwig.
Mr. Hartwig. Hey, that's me. Tom, you'll tell me if I'm wrong on any of this, because you were there. And he hit on a lot of this stuff. Since 2000, we got off the council in 2014, No, 2007 or 8.
I was up 2000, I came back on here.
Okay. But you were there for 8 years. Just 4?
Only 4.
Well, anyway, Tom and I both were on the initial developments coming in on between Darrow and Reagan Hill. And then Foothills, Safstrom, whatever, and they were building and made no effort to, at that time, there was a requirement, not a suggestion, that lots would be 7,500 square feet or bigger, and that there would be parking at least on one side of the street, and that there was trails, and for every 20 acres they put in, they donate, I don't know if it was a half acre or if it was one lot or whatever. I know that I worked as a volunteer putting it in up here on between Darrow and Reagan Hill with some other volunteers. And it's kind of a fenced, it's got houses all the way around it. And it's got, what's that?
Basketball court and a playground.
I don't know what's up there right now, but I know that we put in the swing set and the horseshoe pitching. That was my part of it. And putting in the fences. Those were requirements. And then I see somewhere between 2008 and 2014, when we were on, we got demoted down to the planning commission.
No, we were not.
Huh?
Up.
We went up. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, we got a raise. How much was it for the raise? About 50%? Two-
More than that.
Yeah, 200%. We got nothing. And but we had what we were looking at, and then when did this strategic comp plan or whatever strategic plan or whatever it was,
The comprehensive
Get-
plan, those goals
comprehensive
and
plan,
policies,
yes.
yeah, those goals and policies.
when was that incepted?
We don't actually know when those specific ones are. It could be as long as.
It was kind of
could be
like
2
they left
years
the
ago.
building codes and the development codes got thrown out the window. And I went to Denise, I said, well, when did we throw our building codes out? She says, we didn't. I said, well, I got news for you. I says, yes, we did. I said, nowhere on here is being administrating or, the inspectors. Huh, I don't know anything about that. I says, my book, which was given to me in 95 for our 16 codes, went away. And a lot of the building codes and the requirements of park SDCs. And if you had 20 acres, you were, I think you had to give up a half an acre. I could be wrong on that. It might be a quarter acre. anyhow, we had one developer up here, he did 9.98 acres. It was a 21 acre piece. And the second half of that was 9.9 acres. He deducted the road between the two, you know, from a fence line to a fence line. And, oh, no, you ain't getting away with this. And he did put in a playground up there on Darrow Road. But we had to, Tom and I, we walked everything that came to us. We didn't take pictures or just read something on a paper. If you don't go look at it, you don't have an idea what's going on. And so I had to talk Tom into it. He says, that was a good idea. You know what you're talking about rather than come up. And this what we've been talking about, request or suggested. That was never, ever in any of our code work or requirements, ever suggested.
Yeah.
I want to laugh like he's doing, but I'm a little more agitated. But I realize you're not responsible for that. Somebody dropped the ball and it's higher up than we are. And so he is absolutely right that for a park and trails and a pet area, everybody's got kids and pets. If you don't have an area of it, I'm watching it right there next to my property right now.
Yeah.
They've offered me so much money. I turned them down. That's how much money they offered me. It had too many loopholes in it. I can't do a 1031 and make it work. So anyway, I'm going to put a park on my property. And instead of those 3-story son of a guns, all stairs, I got to walk that last Friday. And I looked at what they had. Yeah, they're nice big units, 1 parking spot per unit. I am going to have 2, and I'm only building duplexes. I don't give crap. Unless you change the code that I can't do that. Putting duplexes every 8,000 square feet. I want lawns, I want green space, I want parking space. And if you want to play baseball out in the street, I like that too. And pickleball.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is yet, but it's
Very
coming.
popular. Come to Estacada Middle School's tennis
On-
court
on-
pretty much every day. It's busy.
But anyway, I'm glad to see that this came up and when Campanella's came in to be in for them small lots, I was not given my council packet because they said, Richard's going elk hunting. I always came back for the council meetings every year. And I wasn't given that and they passed that 4,000 square foot. And I was just, I said, you gotta be kidding. Well, if you like to shake hands with your neighbors and have yourself a paradise fire that blows right through the units. So, thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
I myself, we don't have enough trails. We don't have enough pocket parks. We definitely need some
Fields.
big fields.
Yes.
And what's that?
Here, hold on, let's stay here.
For sure.
That's the
Stay
spring
here.
corridor.
Hey, Richard, this way. Please,
Yeah.
keep us organized.
Okay, I think I had one other thing here. So we no longer have anything if they come in like they annexed clear to Deuce Road. How many hundreds of acres was that? 180? Maybe more, 380? I don't know. That's a lot of houses. But not one park is in the master plan. Not one. You have a road, apartments are gonna go down each side of Eagle Creek Road. And there's not a way to stop that at this point. I mean, it's already been authorized and computerized and non-sterilized.
So,
But anyway, I'll let Tom have
yeah,
the
since we
meeting.
aren't even talking about that.
Parks and Rec, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, my thing is, so where we at now? You aren't finished with us yet, right?
So we got some questions and comments from you. If there's any other questions that you have on the top of your mind or comments that you want to share about the stuff we just presented or anything else, we'd love to hear it. We also do have a list of questions that we will want to ask you at some point throughout this process. We can do it now, we can do it later. We could just get to the first question on the list, which was what I mentioned earlier, kind of identifying what are the goals and just some of the desired outcomes of going through this process. If we staff can get an idea of what your specific goals or desired outcomes are, that helps us know what more research we need to do, what, you know, the process is going to need to look like.
What I'm hearing here, I could be wrong, is that our goals are kids. You know? And we need a place for the kids to be able to play. Like I said, back, I don't know where our what do you call it? Our decisions for making parks went. But is that something that you could check in and see what it would take to get it back? Or even if the, you know, get some kind of questionnaire or see if the city council is even up for it, or because, you know, obviously all this is going to go through the city council. Yeah, so my thinking is, I would love to be able to hand the city council a lot of stuff, but I don't want to step on anybody's toes while we're doing it. And we still got the park and rec, that's very important to this community. So
Okay,
I like to see everybody get involved, even if it's some kind of workshop. The workshops are really hard for me lately, but I can do it, but.
so to conclude with Tom, and I think it sounds like we're pretty aligned in the intent of what we want to do. And so I think the things that we would like back or for to get started would be ultimately to start compiling some type of language, both in policy and code, similar to that of the examples that you've brought forth, that I think you can kind of synthesize the general direction of what we're looking for. I think that dedication and fees in lieu of are probably two legitimate pathways to explore. The reservation, I agree with you, sounds a little bit less in line with the direction that we're going. And I don't know if all of them offered all three of those or not, but I would say the dedication and the fees in lieu of is good. I like Canby's example of all subdivisions, including new business spaces. I think that's appropriate. And so something along those lines. And then also, I do think there should be some exceptions. And so I'd love for you to draft what you think those exceptions might look like when it comes to that. And then I don't know the acres per residence, but if you wanted to take a stab at that.
So we have in the Parks Master Plan, they have identified.
That already exists. Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
It's
Then
20, right?
whatever's
that
in
right?
line with that, I'm good. Cause that's aspirational. Like we want to
Yeah.
have 20 kids per teacher. The city wants this much acreage per, like, I get that.
Per thousand, yeah.
That's fine. And then the last thing is just the SDCs, because I agree with Tara that we want to preserve and protect what's already in the SDC space. And so what does the language look like to make sure that if the developer chooses fees in lieu of, that literally goes towards what it's intended to, and that's for the city to purchase the land in lieu of,
Right.
in order to do that. So that would be my request to you is, how can we start the language on this pathway to start moving it to the city council, which we can lobby. I do believe we have community support for, but I just want to, if you could get us on the train track that gets us towards a policy direction with the opportunity to start moving it vertically up would be great.
Yeah, we can definitely start drafting some code or at least draft some recommendations for how the code.
Yeah, thank you.
What that could look like for sure.
Excellent.
Yeah, there's some redundancy in the, the six that you chose, but they have, all of them have very, very good points that need to be included.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I actually
you.
made a spreadsheet to kind of keep track of what was happening where and what the commonalities were. And
Yeah.
that's how I was able to kind of organize this, but
So do we need another meeting for this, or do we want to add to the next meeting?
Yeah, I
Or
think.
you
I
want
think
to just
regular
hold
is
off
helpful.
and you guys make the call if you think you need to add on? I'm willing to do anything,
Okay, yeah,
but I'm not talking about these guys.
your next scheduled meeting is, well, the next thing you have on your agenda is a land use application that will be on the October
Right.
18th meeting. If you want to bring this discussion back next month, it would be September 20th. But there's nothing else currently scheduled for that meeting. If you give us 2 months, that gives us a little more time to do the digging. We are busy these days, so we would appreciate the more time, but I do think we've got some good direction. I think the thing that's gonna, I have a clear idea of what the development code amendment and if any comp plan amendments are needed, I have a clear idea on that process. I'm less clear on how the SDC schedule gets updated. So that's something we're gonna need to do digging on. It's gonna take a little time to draft up the potential code, but we could come back with, some forward movement in September if we want. Otherwise, if you guys are comfortable waiting until October 18th, we'll just put it on that meeting and probably come back with a little more on the SDC, how to get that SDC updated.
Do you anticipate prior to October 18th, any major developments coming in front of this committee?
No,
Okay.
nope.
Then I'm fine with that. I just don't want to approve another major one until we have something that supports what we're trying to do.
Right, yeah.
Interest rates stay.
They would have had to, they would have to have submitted, they would have to have had a pre-app,
Sure.
a month ago and submitted their application
Great.
way before
But
now.
I'm-
So nothing anytime soon.
I'm sure your backlog is just not this only, so.
Yeah.
So, we want to make sure we aren't putting too much on you, but because we're depending on you guys, that's basically it, at least I am. So,
October is an appropriate timeline.
October sounds good.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
that sounds
The
good. to
Fed
us.
isn't gonna do anything before then.
What's that?
The Fed is not going to do anything before then, and that's what drives everything.
Sure,
Got one
yep.
little thing. You asked us for goals. And this is a pretty simple, long-winded way to put it, but I wrote it down so I remember it. You're doing what needs to be done, which is the proper planning will promote our parks, recs, trails, and a quality of life rather than just asphalt, concrete, and houses. I mean, this is what we were hoping to get before this come, and we thought we had it nailed down in the council back when I was on there. But
found out differently, huh?
yeah, now
Yeah.
we've got a different set of rules to go by that don't quite meet the standard of what we were looking for. And so.
Yeah, I will say, I
oh,
don't
thank
know
you, too.
who, I don't know when the word encouraged was put in there. We can find all of that. That's all on record if you really want to find that, but it'll takes time.
Don't
I don't
spend
think
any
we should spend time on that, but,
It happened.
up until, I think it was 2017 when the state first adopted whatever bill it was requiring cities to only apply clear and objective standards for residential development. Before that, city councils could exercise a lot more discretion in what they require to approve a subdivision. So before that, they could point to that code criteria that says developers are encouraged And they could say, well, we want a park, so we're gonna require it. And the state could not punish the city for making that kind of discretionary, not clear and objective requirement. After 2017, we weren't allowed to do that anymore. And so especially the fact that that word encouraged but not required is in there just makes that whole code section completely useless because we can't
Thank you.
use it anymore. But before that, we could have. So that might be what you're thinking of there.
Okay, staff, there's no place for these people to talk about it. We don't get that going on our discussion only.
Right, this was not a public hearing, but there will be the public
but
comment
they're
section
not- Oh, down here.
separately in the agenda.
Oh, okay. So are we happy with what direction we're going on this?
And yeah, I would not worry about the past. I would move forward.
Yep.
Hey, we all want you to keep going.
Okay, I feel good.
If you need any help, Ben's available. I'm sure one of us will answer the telephone. I won't, but my wife answers mine. Okay, let's move on. We got public hearing. There's none, so we can go on to public comments. This is where you guys can talk if you want to talk. All you have to do is come up, tell us your name, where you're from, and what you're talking about, I guess, would probably be nice.
Justine?
Should have came here a long time ago. Learned quite a bit just sitting here listening.
Down to the.
Gonna ask him to give his name. and
So, okay,
address.
now,
Did that already.
my name's Gary Albin. I live up on Megan Road. These are some of my neighbors. And for
Can
the
you
last
speak up a
few,
little bit more? please?
Or we can turn up the microphone.
Oh, one of that would be nice.
is that better?
That's great.
Okay. I've lived there for 8 years. And we've watched our development grow. We were one of the first houses up there. And through the course of time, people have come and gone. And there was an HOA voted in 2 years after we moved in. Since then, many of the people that live there have moved on. We've had, even though it's a new neighborhood, there's been a high turnover. So we got a lot of new neighbors in the last 5 years. The HOA was never well received. It just barely passed. Yeah, it's, a lot of us didn't even know that it was still going. A lot of people moved in. They didn't even know they had an HOA. They weren't even notified by the realtors or anybody. So it's been flying by the seat of its pants. No one's been running it. And to be quite honest, the last couple of years, and these are some of my neighbors that can attest to it, a lot of the people in the neighborhood are flat pissed off and they don't want anything to do with it. On July, my neighbor Everett and I, we just decided, we keep hearing the grumbling. Well, let's just find out how many people are upset with an HOA. There's 62 houses up there. We went to everyone. It took us 3.5 to 4 weeks with the petition because we wanted to hit everybody. There was only 4 or 5 we couldn't reach. They were just out of town. We have 54 that want to dissolve the HOA. And I think there's 1 that wants to keep it, and it's several undecided. We're looking like 87%. Yeah, and then I think the 1 changed, Everett. We got the email today, that 1, so. I mean, it's pretty decisive. No one wants the HOA. It does nothing for us. There's no reason. The purpose of the HOA supposedly was we have a path that's about from here to the tree out there. Makes a couple little turns. And we got 6.5 acres between Copeland Road and going up
Can I keep
That's-
going?
Oakview.
Do you mind if he continues?
Yeah.
He's,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
That's supposedly unusable or unbuildable. That's part of the reason we're here today. We would like to know, everyone wants to dissolve the HOA. No one, including me, knew how to do it. So we just went online. We're flying by the seat of our pants. We got the signatures. We're
My
talking to people.
suggestion would be come down. And
So HOAs are
Yeah,
managed
one-
through the county,
the-
not the city.
the city manager or assistant.
I'm the assistant city
assistant
manager. Yeah, the
Well-
HOAs are
And-
managed through the county, not the city. So your dissolution,
talking
everything would have
online.
to go.
Well, we were told to come to the planning commission to find out about the 6.5 acres,
Yes.
whether it's
Oh, for that.
sellable. But for us to dissolve our HOA, we have to get rid of our assets. One is the path up there, and we would just like to see the city take that.
Yeah, I have a response to that. So I spoke with the city manager over here. Hey. Yeah, we spoke last week.
Right,
And yeah, and I was
exactly.
able to talk to our city manager, and I tried to email you back, but I couldn't tell what the email address was. So I'm really glad that you came today, so I could tell you. Okay. So Melanie said that the city doesn't accept properties that are managed by the HOA or so any kind of open space or park space is usually not taken over by the city. And she was familiar with that, the lands that you're talking about. And she said that I think at the time of approval of that subdivision, the city declined to accept that land. So they didn't want it dedicated, and that's why the HOA took it over.
Well, I was just saying here, can't that be changed?
It's
with-
my understanding that the city's position on that has not changed. So the city would still not want to take that land.
Well, right behind us between First Street and Oakview Lane with Overlook Court going up, there was what I guess you'd call a pocket park. And in between First Street coming into the pocket park, there is a paved path that's all maintained by the city. I just don't see why we are forced to live in an HOA when everyone around us is not.
Okay, my problem here, and maybe I'm wrong, but we have nothing to do with this. We really don't. Like I was saying before I got interrupted by somebody, what you need to do is make a reservation or an appointment with the city staff. And the city manager can design it and whoever she wants, hopefully she will be one of them, to come and meet with you guys and give you your options. But there's not a thing we can do about it. Because it's been moved and approved, the city council approved it, I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
And the first thing I would do is go check on that 6 acres and see what they're doing on that 6 acres.
Well, that's
But-
where we were
but-
told to come
But
here.
The whole point is, you need to work with the city, it says, fighting with the city, work with it. Am I right? Do we have any jurisdiction
You've
here?
already got the petition signed for who's for it.
Okay, then it goes to the city.
And then it should go to
County.
either the city
County.
planners or
Exactly.
the city council.
It goes to the county is where it sounds
Okay,
like it goes.
But you may have to have some legal definitions as to how to get from point A HOA to no point HOA.
Well, that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. You're
We,
getting started in the right place.
Yeah.
But we're not the entity that can grant that.
Would.
no, our
your-
neighbor told us, she was on the city council, and she said that we needed to come to the planning commission first. So that's why we're here.
Who's
Otherwise, we would have went to the city council.
Council said that?
Oh, gosh, that was But
Councilor Hughes.
Charity Hughes.
So, do I understand this correctly? You have the petitions necessary, but in order to dissolve the HOA, you still need to get rid of the assets.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
if the city, so you can always, if you want to dispute the city manager's determination, the city manager determined that's not within the interest of the city doesn't want to take ownership of that tract. The city council could override that. So you are welcome to bring that request to the city council.
But if you talk to the city manager at all.
No, we were just told
I was
we
talking to the
needed to
city
come here and
manager.
that's why we're
Okay,
here.
first, just go to the city manager, talk to her. If you don't get an answer out of her that you like, then you go right straight to the city council.
I think
Awesome.
Alan,
Okay.
what I was
So,
understanding
that's-
was that Alan already
right.
said that there was an answer from the city manager. Isn't that the case?
Yes, yeah.
So the
I
city
spoke-
manager said no, so the next
Yes.
step is to ask the city council if they will override that no. The other piece of it is if the city council also does not want to take over ownership of that tract. I'm curious if there are enough neighbors who would be willing to form some other kind of entity, nonprofit, a land trust or an LLC or whatever that could take over ownership of that shared tract. But it would not be an HOA, which is subject to all of the CC&Rs and is owned and, profits go to someone who lives, who knows where. I don't know how your HOA works, but that's true in a lot of the subdivisions here.
What about, how do we find out whether it's, we've been told so many things, we don't know what to believe.
Well,
We've been told it's not
here-
believable or it's not buildable, but we don't know for sure.
I know what you mean. I've been sitting here watching her and she's been shaking her head.
The
Well-
other thing, it's probably not buildable. Planning staff can confirm that for you. Usually things like that get reserved in a tract, which is different from a buildable lot. And so it's probably a tract that got platted that as a non-buildable tract. That is also something that the city council would be able to change by modifying the subdivision conditions of approval. So that would be two requests for the council. Will they, and we would support recommending to change that to a buildable lot. The council would decide to change it to a buildable lot and they would decide whether or not they want to take it over. If they don't want to take it over, but they're willing to change it to a buildable lot, that gives you some more options to.
Okay, so that's through the city council.
Let her talk. Have they came to your guys' office?
They emailed
And-
Alan and Alan forwarded it to our office and we answered an email. And Alan just read that answer to them.
Is that tomorrow? What did you say?
They emailed us and we responded,
Okay,
yes.
but that's how far as you went.
And the answer was no, we won't accept that tract of land.
I have one question then. if
Yes.
It's all right.
Cool.
Could they donate that to the Nature Conservancy and it's all done?
Yeah, they can donate it to another agency. Yes, they don't have to donate it to the city. They could find somebody else to take ownership of that land. As long as it's not, but we're not willing to take it.
I don't want to get into it, but why wouldn't the city take it?
I off the
We
top of
can
my
talk
head,
later.
yeah, I want to say that
I-
there's
I-
some maintenance issues, with where it's located was a little hard for us, but I've not actually looked at the piece of land.
It's
The
just a
people
couple
up
of
there,
blocks
right?
from where the other park is, the city.
Yeah, that's
maintains.
what I was thinking. It's pretty steep. It's really hard to maintain. Yeah.
Okay, so you know the direction that we think. If you get in a roadblock down here, these two here is wonderful. Right here, not that far. Over here. She's-
I'm looking
she's
for
shaking
help
her head.
anywhere we can get it.
Not wonderful.
I know.
So we're gonna back.
Into a microphone, I'm sorry, public meeting rules.
No.
Okay, if the city doesn't want the
Name.
part that goes, oh, I'm Barb Haugen. if the city doesn't want the part that goes down to the creek, and we can get that to Nature Conservancy or a builder or whoever, would the city take the pathway off of our hands? That's not steep. It's just a trail that goes from our neighborhood to a neighborhood below us. And why are we tasked with keeping that when, like he said, there are other paths like that in the Reagan neighborhood that the city controls?
So then you'd have to do what, a lot line adjustment first?
It could either, you could accomplish it in a lot of different ways. You could do a lot line adjustment, you could do a replat to turn part of it into buildable or whatever.
Yeah.
There are different options that.
We could do
we could
away
do.
with the path if we wanted to.
Yeah,
I'm
but if
not-
there's
I'm
anything-
not saying we'll accept it. I'm saying that the first step would be that you would have to
Okay,
divide
so
that so that.
You can
there's
move
two
lot
separate-
lines or
yeah.
It
divide
sounds to me
things.
like you guys are now on this right, the right wavelength. These two, she's sitting out talking, not shaking, that's good.
Hopefully we
Um,
a little bit.
I'm kidding, by the way.
Oh, no, she's got to do what she's got to do. And
Yeah,
we don't want that either. So I.
I
But
I don't blame.
Yeah.
Okay, but,
I agree that this is something that we staff can help you navigate. Not that the planning commission aren't smart and helpful, but our role will be more helpful to
we want
you.
tomorrow?
We can meet with you separately and help you figure out what your request to council needs to look like and what the different
Great.
options
Thank
are.
you so much.
Yeah.
You should probably
thank
seek
you.
legal advice from an
All right,
attorney as well
Good job,
at
guys.
some point.
Anybody else want to talk?
No, I
That's
think
it?
you should seek
Okay.
legal advice from an attorney.
Well,
Yeah.
The the one thing you don't want to do is upset people either, or you aren't gonna get nothing. Yeah, believe me, well, you gotta fight.
People that are upset.
Okay, so
Okay.
the next part goes to commission comments.
None.
Do we have any? You got any? I
No.
think you talked to nothing, no, just kidding.
Yeah, nope, I contributed. I'm
Richard
good.
Here,
No.
Kara, got anything to say? Kara,
Nope.
okay, so we have nothing to talk about, just you guys work with them, you know, that's the way to do it. Okay, you know what direction to go to. You know, if the city manager don't want to help, we got this her now, so, okay.
I'll get Alan my, they're pitbull.
Yeah, let me get that from you again.
Okay, so sit down, not that fast.
I got a cramp.
Okay, it says here, next meeting. I got lots on this one.
I don't.
Cancel. Next
So-
meeting on
We don't currently have,
October 18th.
we don't currently have anything scheduled for the September meeting. So
So that's.
if you're all
canceled
okay
too.
with that,
Oh,
we'll cancel September and the next time you would meet would be October 18th.
18.
If that, it sounds good to you all.
October 18th, okay. Okay, nobody has anything to say?
No.
You want to yell at me? 'Cause I-
Don't answer
I
that.
will
I picked
schedule
on
a
you,
time
you're-
to yell at you later. How's that?
Okay,
Okay.
I guess we're done if the commissioners has nothing. Richard is gone, so he got the heck out, huh? Okay. I close this meeting, or adjourn this meeting.
Okay,
Thank you for coming.
Hey,
thank you.
what I'm going to do is I'm gonna take all the stuff that